Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial, we are going to make this cute little s'more tumbler. We are jumping right in using a 12-ounce morning mug from the Still Magnolia. This is a pre-prepped that they offer in their store, and I have just taken a piece of sandpaper and went around the top to expose a little bit of that stainless around the top rim. I have my Ultimate Tumbler tool from Cami Page Boutique. This has lots of functions such as helping you make your lines to get your vinyl straight, and in this case we are going to use it to make our perfect and even lines around the top and the bottom of this tumbler. Normally I would use a pencil, but just so you can see the lines a little bit better and see how well this works, I just unscrewed the little tightening screw, slid in the fine point Sharpie, and then tighten that up, and then I can also adjust the other side up or down depending on how far I want my line from the top of my tumbler. Once I have both of those in place, I just press that up against my tumbler very lightly, spin my tumbler around, and I'm going to get a perfect line all the way around the rim of my tumbler. This is going to give me a guide so that I can tape off a perfect line for the graham cracker portion of our s'more. Now, since we have a handle on this, it did block me from getting about 2 inches around the tumbler, but since we have the line the rest of the way around, I can pretty much line that up. And of course, if you don't have a handle on the tumbler, or if it's further down, then it definitely will go all the way around using the tool. I flipped the cup over and did the bottom side as well, and I'm going to take some painter's tape and just tape off the center portion of this tumbler. Over the past couple of years, I have saw a few of these little s'mores tumblers with the chocolate drip. However, they have an ombre from the bottom with a golden color, or what you would imagine would be a graham cracker crust, or even some charring from a campfire. But for this one, I wanted to try to do or make it seem as if it was a marshmallow with some melted chocolate on top in between 2 graham crackers. And I will say I probably went about this a little backwards, I guess you can say. I probably should have taped off the top and the bottom rim, glittered the center portion with my white glitter, allowed that to dry, and then I could have easily went in with a flat tip paintbrush and painted the top rim portion and the bottom rim and applied our golden glitter that way. But a lot of times that's what happens whenever I make a design for the first time or try to recreate something. I go about it the most difficult way, or what makes sense at the time, and as I'm going through with that design or project, I am thinking of ways to make it easier. So I wanted my line to be just a hair above and below that handle, because when we add our drip on, I want to put the drip just a little over the top of the handle. So once I got to the handle, I trimmed off a very small piece of that painter's tape and just put it along the top to protect it as we are putting on our paint and our glitter. We're using Grounded and Latte COLORFLEX paints from COLORFLEX for our base, and I did originally start with a flat brush since I'm working in a smaller section than I normally do, but I very quickly went and grabbed my all over makeup brush to apply this paint. It just works so much better. The bristles are so soft on a makeup brush, it's almost an effortless, perfect paint coverage every single time when you use it. Once I had all of my paint on, I grabbed my heat gun and just used the low heat setting to dry this up pretty quickly so that I can move in to adding my epoxy and glitter. Again, this probably would have been easier had I taped off the top and the bottom first, did my white glitter using the epoxy method, removed the tape and allowed that to dry, and just used the COLORFLEX paints to paint and apply the glitter, since it's a paint primer and adhesive in one. I just took a very tiny amount of epoxy so it would be super thin around that top and bottom, and once I had my epoxy in all areas, I went over and just dabbed with my gloved hand. That helps give your epoxy a little bit of texture rather than streaks, so you don't have to sit it to the side and wait for it to level out before adding your glitter on. For our graham cracker, we are using white sand from COLORFLEX. This is a very beautiful light golden color. We're going to be adding a very tiny strip of the textured gold from TeckWrapcraft, and that vinyl matches this glitter so perfectly it almost just blends in, and that's exactly what I was going for. I'm basically just using the vinyl strip that we add on later to establish a nice crisp clean line, not to stand out from our tumbler. After I applied my glitter, I just went over with my gloved hand and tapped the glitter down, same as if we were to be using like a tumbler without a handle. I would have rolled it in some either parchment paper or in a sheet of notebook paper to flatten out that glitter to help eliminate extra epoxy and sanding. And immediately go in and remove your tape. However, go slow so you don't rip off some of your paint, just like I did. As you can see on the top, I had a very nice clean removal. If you hold your tape at a sharp angle, as you see I'm doing there, it really helps eliminate pulling off or damaging any of the paint and glitter you have already laid down. So I gave that a couple of minutes to dry, and then I went back in with a couple little dabs of our paint, and then added on a little bit of epoxy in those areas that I damaged and reapplied my glitter to those sections, and we were good as new. Okay, so two things. I had to correct the bottom rim with the paint and reapply that epoxy, and since I'm using a fast set, by the time I had made that correction, it had started setting up just a little bit, and honestly it was a little too far for me to attempt to apply the glitter, but I'm stubborn and here we are. So this is me really trying my best to get this epoxy to spread out, although it is setting up pretty quickly on me. And secondly, I should have waited all together to do this middle section. I should have allowed the top and bottom rim to dry completely, sealed that in, and then taped it off and went in with the center section, so it would have saved me a lot of hassle and that glitter just from the top and bottom spreading into my white area. The good thing is we did not have to get very close to that top rim since we are going to do our chocolate drip. So I didn't take my epoxy all the way up to the top portion of our graham cracker. I used my silicone tool from PDB Creative Studio to pull that glitter right up against that bottom glitter and was able to get a very nice clean line, with the exception of some of that glitter just coming into my white section. I used the other end of this tool to remove all of those specks of glitter before adding on our white so that those specks did not show through. For our white marshmallow section, we are using Pearl from PDB Creative Studio. This is one of my favorite whites to use, especially around Christmas time. As you can see, it is not a super sparkly glitter, but it has such a beautiful pearly look to it. It just really stands out and just has so much depth to me to be one color glitter. So if you don't have that in your collection for the upcoming holidays, then most definitely go grab some. Alright, so I have had lots of requests to show my sanding technique. So here we are. I have a piece of 400 grit sandpaper and a piece of 220 grit. The 220 wasn't quite cutting it around this top rim, so I grabbed a piece of 60 grit and I'm going around that rim sideways. I'm not going up and down because I don't want to damage my glitter or peel that away from the top. I want to expose just a tiny bit of that stainless around the top of the rim so that our epoxy will have some stainless to grab a hold of, and any excess epoxy that may go over the top of the rim can be trimmed off and our seal will be left. I'm a huge stickler for smooth cups. It really bothers me when there are any like little pokey pieces or anything like that on the top or the bottom rim, and especially through the center of the cup or the handle. I feel like having a smooth cup really shows the quality and the effort that you have put into them. So I will use a 220 or 320 grit sandpaper all around the tumbler, really focusing on the top and the bottom rims. And then I will go in with a 400 grit to further smooth that out. Now this was only after the first coat of epoxy. That will vary depending on what size glitter that you use and how rough your tumbler is. This one was actually pretty good after the first coat, so I felt comfortable going in with the sandpaper and not compromising the look of the glitter on the tumbler. I normally sand twice, once after the first or second coat of epoxy and then once before my final coat. I added another coat of epoxy to make our tumbler smooth, and we are going to cut our decal. So for our image, we are going to use this new black shimmer vinyl from TeckWrapcraft, and we're also going to use this piggy pink. This is from their 001 matte 5-foot roll bundle, and it's $60 for 10 different colors of vinyl, 5 foot a piece. So I mean, that's a pretty good deal, and the colors of the vinyl are beautiful. I love my TeckWrapcraft. I did use the iron-on setting to cut through the shimmer vinyl. It's a tiny bit thicker, but not too bad. So just remember to use a heavier cut setting when using the shimmer vinyl, and it obviously still weeds really, really well. This image is from Etsy, and y'all just look at how cute it is. Doesn't it just make you smile? Now, when I apply this decal, normally I would put it in the center of the tumbler, but since we are doing a drip, I did put it on the lower portion so that I can give a little bit of room to have a nice drip around the top rim. Now, as I mentioned in the beginning, we are going to use this textured gold vinyl, also from TeckWrapcraft. I just trimmed 2 super thin strips using my vinyl trimmer, and we're going to place that along the seam of our gold and white glitter. Once I had my vinyl in place, I'm going to tape off with painter's tape right over the top of it. Now you can add on a layer of epoxy if it makes you more comfortable before adding on your drip. If the drip does come down too far, it could compromise, ruining your decal. So I do suggest adding on a layer of epoxy in between if you have not done a lot of drips before. I'm gonna make sure that that painter's tape is really pressed down well on top of that vinyl strip. I don't want any epoxy or paint seeping through and going on top of it, since we're eliminating the layer of epoxy in between. I'm gonna mix up a little bit of paint, and for this I'm using Grounded once again and adding in a little black to get like a dark, it's not really a chocolate color. I probably could have just used black, but I'm not a color mixer, okay? I tried. All I wanted to do is make this a little bit darker so that if by chance our epoxy thins at top, you're not going to be able to tell because there is a dark base and not that white glitter showing through. For our drip, I'm using Artistry's 1:1 ratio fast set, and we are going to add in Espresso mica powder from PDB Creative Studio. This is the perfect chocolate color. It looks just like melted chocolate. Just get that mica mixed in really well to make sure that there's no like powdery clumps in there. You definitely don't want that when you are applying your drip, because they will pop and that powder will come out, and you'll be able to tell even if you add a layer of epoxy on top. So just set that to the side and stir it occasionally. Once you start feeling the epoxy heat up just a bit, it's time to start working with it. Now again, this is a fast set epoxy. If you were working with a regular epoxy, you'll definitely want to use some sort of additive to thicken it up. I usually use Nice and Thick from CC DIY, or you can allow it to set up and to the point to where it is sticking to your popsicle stick, and you can do test runs on the edge of your mixing cup to see if it starts flowing down the side. You really don't want a lot of flow to it, otherwise it will just fall down the side of your tumbler. But to start with this, we're going around the top of that tape, or the bottom of the tape, sorry, I keep saying the top. We're going around the bottom of that tape and basically painting the epoxy on. Although you can see when I dip the popsicle stick into the cup, it still has a lot of flow to it, but once I put it on the tumbler, it's staying where I put it. And again, that is because we are using a fast set epoxy. Once it starts heating up, it's going to set up very quickly. Now, my camera did die at the most important part of this whole tutorial. So here is a clip of me applying the same exact chocolate drip from one of my past tutorials I did for the holidays last year. I had to run really fast and go get a charger, and my phone did come back up, but just as I was finishing up my drip. So what you want to do is hold your cup horizontally with your table. You don't want to tilt it, because it can cause those drips to go sideways, and we want them to go straight down once we stand our cup up. Just paint it around using some little swirl motions, and then once you have it pretty much exactly where you want, grab your heat gun and carefully go around with low heat and heat up that drip just a hair. That way it really smooths out. Now, if the drip starts flowing a little too far down, then just flip your cup over just for a couple of seconds to help it go the opposite way, and you can constantly work with it back and forth until that epoxy sets up. That is one reason why I like to use a fast set for this, is because it really eliminates all of the dripping that a regular epoxy would do until it really starts to set up. Now, before this sets up completely, we want to remove our tape. I am going to remove it at an angle going towards our drip. That way we're not pulling any strings of epoxy on top of our little strip of gold. With Artistry's 1:1 ratio fast set, you only have to wait 30 minutes in between your epoxy coats. So after that has set for about 30 minutes, I went in with my first of 2 final coats. When applying your epoxy to a handle cup, make sure you spend a lot of time getting the coat thin around the handle and getting any clumps of epoxy away from the bottom of those handles. If there's clumps of epoxy, it can pull and it doesn't necessarily look very clean, and it can also hold micro bubbles since your torch is unable to get to the bottom of that clump of epoxy. And you're going to use that same rule for around the bottom of your drips as well. Go around your drips and make sure that they are coated completely with epoxy, and then just take your gloved hand and run around the bottom of the drip to get any excess or pools of epoxy away. That way when you do torch, it is going to be able to reach the layer of epoxy you have on there and get rid of any micro bubbles that may be in there. I have had lots of people ask me if I spin my cups, since I don't really show it that often. These arms are detachable, so I like to apply my epoxy over my table in a silicone mat, and then I pop them on my turner. This is a 10-cup stackable turner from Artistry Epoxy. They also do have a single tilting turner, and I will be doing a review very soon on the tilting turner, as well as this awesome 10-cup stackable. And we will be giving a single turner away, so definitely keep an eye out for that. I think this turned out so stinking cute. We love going tent camping in the mountains, and I wanted to make my daughter something that she can have her hot chocolate by the campfire, and of course it stay nice and toasty in this Steel Magnolia tumbler, even in the cold mountains. I hope that y'all have enjoyed this tutorial. Let me know what you think of starting the drip a little bit further down so we can have a graham cracker top, or do you like the look of the drip starting at the rim of the tumbler better? As always, all of the products that I have used will be listed in the description below, as well as some coupon codes for y'all. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. That is all for today. Thank you all so much, and we will see you next time.